I gotta be honest, man. At this moment, I actually feel really, really bad for the average modern day liberal and really all of the 24/7 victims of insane propaganda. You have to feel bad for these people. I mean, everything they thought that was real, everything they thought was true is crushed. They woke up yesterday morning and it's all gone. Their entire worldview is shattered. But still, somehow, through every fact and every figure that is available to them, they still somehow believe that they're on the right side of all this. I mean, Donald Trump has broken these people's brains, man. He has turned them into reality denying, elder abusing, authoritarian supporting propaganda simps. I mean, that is what these people are, man. They are emotionally and intellectually changed forever. I mean, it's sad, but it's just so crazy, man. And honestly, I think you have to worry about these people. You have to worry about what they're capable of, man. And I think it's important to see, obviously, what's going on. But also, we got to remind ourselves and our liberal friends of what absolute immunity even is. That is what this whole thing is about.
Don't come out and get targeted and criminally and civilly sued. It's incredibly important. It was a good decision. Obviously, I believe absolute immunity should exist for the executive branch, but they did recognize it. And the presumptive immunity now will then get outlined, kicked back down to the courts, and they will look at it. But the presumption that any president, and President Trump was acting within the perimeter, the outer perimeter of his official acts, is clear through this decision from what I've read so far. Obviously, I'll examine it and speak about it further on the network, but I think that this was a very good decision for us.
Alina, it's Brett Baer. The AP writes it this way. They say Supreme Court sends Trump's immunity case back to a lower court in Washington, dimming prospect of a pre-election trial. I mean, is that what you all are hoping for? And that would be the end result, is that anything gets past the election on any of these cases that are pending?
You know, Brett, let me first start by saying that the team here, the legal team for President Trump, and I think the American people think that these cases should never have existed. Let's just be clear. But now we are in this political attack on a leading candidate because they can't win with their candidate. So we are where we are. Now, as an attorney, as a legal spokesperson, I would just say this. Of course, it is a good day when the Supreme Court recognizes constitutional rights of presidents and the executive branch, but we should never have been in this situation to start with. This is a disgrace to America. So yes, the lower courts, again, will have to hear it. It will, in my opinion, slow down Jack Smith's persecution and selective prosecution of President Trump, and I don't see how this case could go forward before the election.
It's simple. I mean, absolute immunity is simple. Every single federal official enjoys it. And all it is, they can't be sued and they can't be thrown in jail based on anything that happened as a result of their official duties. Basically, if they're doing their job, they're protected. And the left, for some reason, they think that it should apply to people like Barack Obama when they secretly send drones to delete American citizens without any kind of due process, but that it doesn't apply to people like Donald Trump when they give a speech about going to the Capitol peacefully and patriotically. I mean, you just can't make it up. And now that everything that we've been telling them would happen is actually happening exactly like we said that it would, they just can't wrap their minds around it, man. They cannot understand what and why things are happening. And everywhere you look, man, there's one propagandist after another, just literally continuing to infect and prey on these poor people, literally convincing them that the Supreme Court is compromised and Donald Trump is a tyrant. And of course, these are the same people that believe that Joe Biden is some sort of cognitive marvel, the best Joe Biden ever. And I'm going to show you some of the best ones that I've seen yet. But first, guys, if you appreciate this content and you want to join the fight together, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe. It really, really does mean a lot. And it goes a lot to getting the message out there. But after you do that, please enjoy Joy Reid, like literally losing her mind.
This election is no longer about the old guy that's in the White House now. Like, you know, all the op-ed pages and the New York Times can run around and opine about, you know, what Joe Biden should do. And, you know, y'all have fun with that. Enjoy yourselves, intellectual thought leaders. I no longer care. Doesn't matter to me anymore. It's above me now. It's above me now. There's a Waffle House next door. There's a Best Western next door as well. It's above me now. It's above Joe Biden now. Don't care about Joe Biden's age, infirmity, that he shuffled when he walked. I don't care. He could be seated for the rest of, from now to election day, and never get up off a chair. He could sit down. He could roll around in a wheelchair. He could be on a skateboard, seated. I don't care. Donald John Trump cannot be allowed back into the White House. Because if you combine that madman with this court, two of whose members are insurrectionists, one of whom flew an upside down flag at his home and blamed it on his wife, who's also crazy. The other of whose wife literally was part of the insurrection. And they ruled in this. They put themselves in the Leonard Leo 6. They went ahead and ruled on this with no shame. You combine this court, two of whose members are going to immediately resign, and put 30-year-olds in there, including probably the guy who wrote the opinion in the beaters case, meaning that beaters should be able to get machine guns, which, by the way, they have now arrogated to themselves the power to decide all federal rules. Everything, whether your plane that you fly in is safe, how much carbon can be in the atmosphere, how much filth can be in your water. They said agencies that have experts can't decide that. They will decide that. So they are kings, and Trump is king. You put him in the White House, combined with this court and a Republican House and Senate, we're done, y'all. All the rights that were won in the 20th century, the hard-earned rights of women, laborers, workers, the rights of children. Remember, child labor used to be legal. The rights of black folks, forget that. The rights of non-white immigrants, forget that. All of the 20th, they are trying to repeal the entire 20th century, and they're doing it fast.
You know, at least she's being honest, man. She's finally being honest. She does not care. She doesn't care if we have a complete and total vegetable in the White House. She doesn't care if all the Biden crime family stuff is true. She doesn't care about any of it. All she cares about is that Donald John Trump cannot be allowed back in the White House. She says the court is corrupt, Donald Trump is a madman, and the display that she just put on is somehow the picture of normal and the picture of sane. I mean, these are the leaders, man. These people are past the point of no return. They are broken. There is no going back, man. And now that the Supreme Court has given Biden the power to, they believe that Biden can eliminate Donald Trump before he comes for the rights of black people who, remember, they're not actually black unless they support Joe Biden. I mean, these people are crazy. You have to feel bad for them, man. Just listen to the kind of doomsday leftist fantasies that are getting pumped out on MSNBC. Just as you watch this, man, just imagine the average viewer just freaking out as they watch this stuff.
I did meet the press yesterday. And, on Saturday, we do a prep call. And David Gellis, who's the executive producer, said, OK, we have the immunity case coming down. Jen, what do you think? It's such a big deal. Will it change the election? And I said, David, things just can't get any more amped up. And then it happened. And I mean, sad day. It's 5-alarm fire. I mean, when you read Sonia Sotomayor's dissent, and she says the president could have SEAL Team 6 kill a political rival and he would be immune. This is they have decreed, Trump's Supreme Court has decreed him a king. And now it's just up to voters to say, there are no guardrails now. Second term for Trump, there are no guardrails.
But the Chief Justice says, and I read this in the last hour, that this is a chilling doom scenario that the dissenters are making, wholly disproportionate to what the court actually did today.
And what assurance does anyone in America have that Supreme Court would ever tell this man no? I mean, this is just... It's not anything I ever expected to see. I had no notion that America was on this kind of collision course. But I think for the Biden campaign and for people who, after the debate, we see the voters seem to be hanging in there with him. And I think now I think that this is going to dramatically change the race in Biden's favor in terms of people understanding, they just said he could be king. They are never going to tell him no.
These people are insane, man. The court sent the case back to the trial court to figure out what they can still charge Donald Trump with. This is not a court that would not tell him no. I mean, these are not serious people. I mean, honestly, I am 1,000% for free speech. I'm all about the free press, but I'm starting to wonder, man, if stuff like this should be made to carry some sort of like big giant flashing disclaimer on the screen, Nothing said here is possible. This is a dramatization for entertainment purposes only. No one can be the king of America. I mean, because there are people that believe this stuff, man, and it's freaking crazy. And it's not just there, it's everywhere. Every one of these people is passing off fantasy for some sort of reality.
Basically, the question is, Supreme Court, do you more care about the unlawful conduct of a sitting president or possibly the unfair prosecution of a former president? That's really what they had to balance. They're obviously more concerned about the latter.
Think about what he just asked, man. Does the court care more about the unlawful conduct of a sitting president, or do they care more about, in Van Jones's words, the unfair prosecution of a former president? The unfair prosecution. Shouldn't we all care about the unfair prosecution of anyone? I mean, what exactly is he suggesting? Allow for unfair prosecutions to make sure that we prosecute criminal behavior? That doesn't even make any sense. None of that makes any sense. The only thing that he said that makes any sense at all is that this is indeed an unfair prosecution. And as for it being, politically bad for the Supreme Court does not give a shit about politics. This is why they're lifetime appointees. They do not care about politics. That is exactly the point.
Concerned about the latter. And so I think politically, it's bad. It makes the Supreme Court look very partisan. They're supposed to be wearing these kind of black and white umpire jerseys or whatever. They look like they're wearing red jerseys or even MAGA hats. It's going to go down bad politically for the Supreme Court. But it's also scary because what is Trump going to do? If Trump gets elected and there's this idea that he can get away with even more stuff, that's really, really scary for the public because he already ran over every norm that he could. So it seems like, I'm just looking at this politically, not legally. Politically, it's almost like a license to thug in a way. Like, you can do whatever you want, and the Supreme Court is probably going to let you get away with it. That is very frightening in this case. And so I'm very, very concerned.
He's very concerned. They're concerned that the Supreme Court decided something exactly like everyone with the ability to think expected them to, but contrary to what the Van Jones and all the other shills of the world, shivered down the leg crew wanted. I mean, honestly, it's hard to believe that these people can go on TV and say things that they have to know that what they're saying is wrong. I mean, we live in a crazy, crazy world. And honestly, man, if Jake Tapper is the sane and reasonable, maybe even thoughtful one, we live in a crazy world.
Right now I'm looking at an excerpt from the Roberts written decision. He says, quote, Trump asserts a far broader immunity than the limited one we have recognized, meaning the court. The text of the clause provides little support for the absolute immunity claim that Trump asserts. So they're rejecting that. But in essence, all of the details as to the allegations made, the accusations made in the Jack Smith indictment of Donald Trump, not all of them, but many of them, the court is saying, we are sending this back to the district court. They have to decide whether Trump's communications with the American people, calling them to rally to the Capitol on January 6th, and everything that happened after that, the disruption of the counting of the electoral votes, the sham electors scheme, all of that, whether or not that's an official act, has to be determined by the U.S. District Court. And Adley Honig, you were saying what's most significant about that is the U.S. Supreme Court could have said, we're remanding this to the district court, to the lower court, and whatever they say goes, and we will uphold that. They didn't say that.
Exactly. To the contrary. This case will not go before the election. It will not be tried before the election, and here's why. Supreme Court has just said there is such thing as criminal immunity. The test, as we anticipated, is essentially official acts versus unofficial acts. We're sending it back to the district court, and this is an important detail, the court says several times, whatever the district court finds can be appealed before trial. Jack Smith had made an argument of, well, maybe the district judge, the trial judge, can work it out and send it to the jury, and then the jury can separate official from unofficial acts. Several times in this opinion, the Supreme Court, the majority, says explicitly whatever the judge decides about what's official or unofficial, what's immune or not immune, that can be appealed back up. 0% chance that happens before November.
So why do that? I mean, if they are saying, hey, we're the U.S. Supreme Court and we're going to have the final say on this no matter what, why not just make it clear? Everything's delineated in the indictment. Why not just make it clear? And if Judge Chutkin decides X, Y, or Z, we will agree with that. Why not just be explicit?
Because the Supreme Court, they're in a court of appeals, they want to see a record, right? And I think, with Judge Chutkin just kind of dismissing out of hand all conduct whatsoever, the president has no immunity for all criminal conduct, for any criminal conduct. They've gone back and said, no, you need to go look at this and then come back to us based upon what we've said in this opinion. Right?
Yeah, which is exactly why, to Jake's fantasy, it's exactly why they would not send the case back to a lower court and just tell them, yeah, whatever you say goes, just have another look at it and see what you think. It doesn't make any sense. That's why we have higher courts. They do not trust Tanya Chutkin. She had every opportunity to rule and hold hearings and to recognize that every one of these charges is traced back to an official act. Why would they give her that opportunity again? It doesn't make any sense, especially when they do not actually trust her. So the court wants to reserve the right to check her work. The Democrats and all the other crazy people who believe the media when they tell you that this entire thing is just some sort of conservative conspiracy to delay. They're going to tell you it's a MAGA court. They can't be trusted. But if you just look at the decision, man, and everything that they've actually decided as a court, it all makes perfect sense. They did not actually uphold Trump's entire argument. They didn't give him some sort of blanket immunity. They upheld the absolute immunity that already existed. And they just can't wrap their minds around it. It is literally breaking people's brains. And guys, you should read some of the comments that we're getting here on this channel. I mean, one person left something like 20 comments, each one crazier than the last. And I'm going to show you my favorite. They're all up on the screen, but I'm going to show you my favorite. This is the kind of powers. These are the kind of powers that these victims of propaganda think that the court just handed over to Joe Biden. This is what they think Joe can do now. It says, I, Biden, order the Senate to impeach these justices. I, Biden, order the Capitol Security Police and the FBI to remove these Congress people and the senators from the House to get government back open and running. I'm not picking on this person, man, because these people really, they are not well, but they exist. They're everywhere. There are people, and they're a result of this propaganda, man. This is what happens when you skip civics and you literally smoke propaganda.
This opinion.
And the other thing is, it's the right and rules governing when and how to appeal aren't set in stone or aren't entirely clear. And I think they felt some need to delineate that this is an appealable order. They aren't always. And sometimes some things you have to wait to appeal until the end of a trial. They're giving whoever it is, and probably Trump, the opportunity to appeal during trial.
Well, let me ask you, do you think that if Judge Chutkin had ruled differently initially and said, it basically closer to this, the conversations with the Justice Department are clearly official acts. I'm not going to count them, but the other one, like if there had been a less of a sweeping, of course he can be indicted on any of this stuff, ruling by Judge Chutkin, would this not have been ended up where it was today? Did she open the door for a decision like this?
She did. I think Judge Chutkin's going to have a lot of regret. When she issued her opinion, it just said there's no such thing as automatic immunity for everything a president does his whole 4 years. When I was reading that, I said, okay, where's Part B? I expected Part B to be, and I find, having reviewed the record and reviewed the documents, and I find that even if there is such thing as immunity, he was outside the scope. And by the way, that's what the Court of Appeals did on their ruling. The problem is, as Jim was saying, the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court, they're not fact finders. This can only be done at the district court level. And so I suspect Judge Chutkin is feeling some regret. It wasn't like it was some leap of logic that she should do that. This happens. There are hearings. For example, in the Georgia case, Mark Meadows is trying to get his case moved over to federal court. The question there is almost the same thing. Was Mark Meadows in or out of the scope? You know what the federal judge did there in Georgia? He held a hearing. Mark Meadows testified. He said, I find based on this hearing, you're outside the scope. If Judge Chutkin had done that, we'd be in a very different position.
Where I don't agree.
She couldn't do that. She could not do any of that, man. We got to remember, nothing about any of this is about actual justice. Due process is not important to these people. Precedent is definitely not important to these people. Nothing was important at that time except for getting the trial moving, getting it in the books, and getting it over before the election took place. That is all this exercise was about. She couldn't start holding hearings and making smart, time-consuming decisions. They had an election to interfere with, man. And really, it's funny. It's funny to see the dichotomy here, man. Judge Chutkin completely screwed everything up by not doing her job, and still she's some kind of liberal hero. Justice Cannon down in Florida, she's literally doing things exactly like this judge should, like any judge should. Methodical, legal, thoughtful. And to hear the media, she's an incompetent MAGA fool who needs to be replaced. I mean, it's just another reminder of exactly who these people are. And if you ever need any real reminder of who these people really are, that's what we have MSNBC for.
Dissent, because she gets into some of the specifics that were argued in court. She says, looking beyond the fate of this particular prosecution, the long-term consequences of today's decision are stark. The court effectively creates a law-free zone around the president, upsetting the status quo that has existed since the founding. This new official acts immunity now lies about like a loaded weapon for any president that wishes to place his own interests, his own political survival, or his own financial gain above the interests of the nation. The president of the United States is the most powerful person in the country and possibly the world. When he uses his official powers in any way, under the majority's reasoning, he now will be insulated from criminal prosecution. Orders the Navy's SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival, immune. Organizes a military coup to hold on to power, immune. Takes a bribe in exchange for a pardon, immune, 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 immune. Let the president violate the law. Let him exploit the trappings of his office for personal gain. Let him use his official power for evil ends. Because if he knew that he may one day face liability for breaking the law, he might not be as bold and fearless as we would like him to be. That's a quote from the majority opinion that she's using here. That is the majority's message today. Even if these nightmare scenarios never play out, and I pray they never do, the damage has been done. The relationship between the president and the people he serves has shifted irrevocably. In every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. That is all from Justice Sotomayor's dissent. Neil, she's arguing that he can assassinate somebody now. Is that what this majority opinion is saying?
Yes, that is basically what she's saying the majority is saying, and I'm sure that is how Trump will take it. And if you ever were thought about the stakes in November and what they were, this opinion makes them very, very clear. The law is not going to be a check against the next president. And you have to have someone in power who you can trust to execute the laws faithfully and to comply with the Constitution. And, now the stakes are astronomical in a way they might not have been before. This is a clarion call for the American public to understand the law, the courts are not going to protect us against a president who wants to violate the law. The Supreme Court's basically said, you can do that, just slap the label official act on it, and maybe there'll be a hearing over some pieces of it and not, and there won't even be a hearing when it comes to things like pressuring the Justice Department to break the law and to do what you want for your personal ends. So this is a really grave decision. And I think we should be focused on, Justice Sotomayor's warning and not the, technical details just about what this means for the January 6th prosecutions.
Yeah, as usual, man, with MSNBC, each moment is crazier than the last, man. It's hard to find a spot to jump in and just debunk. I mean, if you're being objective, if you can really think, it all pretty much debunks itself. But I mean, it's funny to me that they're so concerned with like violent crimes of the president, violent this, violent that, And my guess is that Barry was actually watching this all pretty closely, and he's probably the only happy Democrat watching all this stuff. I mean, these people, they have no clue what they're talking about. They're so clueless that I'm convinced that it has to be an act, man. It's got to be an act. They're just reading a script and playing a part. I mean, there's no way that this many people with that kind of pedigree, making that kind of money, doing that kind of job, are all this stupid. It's not as simple as they're describing to people. And it's not some MAGA conspiracy to save Trump. The court sent it back to the lower court to decide between public and private acts. And if you look at the charges, man, they all trace back to public acts. I mean, they're public comments, giving speeches, contesting votes. They're all 100% public acts. And honestly, we're in the very same place that a lot of us said that we would be 11 months ago. We are in exactly the right spot. And the amazing thing is watching all these liberals act surprised. It's entertaining, but it's not half as entertaining as watching their brains completely reboot, man. But that's just my take, man. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you haven't already, guys, be a part of our growth. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel. I'll see you in the next one.